Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Small Business Success Interview. I am your host, Small Business Stacey, and I am so honored for today's guest, Josh Patrick, founder of the Sustainable Business.
Hi, I'm Small Business Stacey.
I'm Digital Dave.
Where marketing
meets technology.
Now, when I went to his website to learn more about Josh, I loved his mission statement, which was his main focus in life is helping private business owners create extraordinary value with their businesses and their lives. That's what we all want, right? As we're recording this in the month of July, it's the month where we talk about freedom and independence, and that's what every small business owner wants. So I know that you are going to leave today's session with some great takeaways. Josh, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Stacey. Glad to be here today. I appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely. Now, normally I would have this long, boring bio, and on your website, you had a lot of information about yourself, including like a whole page of certifications and designations that would take just 30 minutes to go through. So we're going to throw that bio out the door. You tell us about yourself. Go ahead.
First of all, a good idea to throw the bio out the door. Because nobody really cares about all that stuff. That's been my experience. I've been involved in private businesses since officially since 1976, but a lot longer than that. I first did my first business thing when I was 7 years old. I used to sell candy I bought from my father's wholesale tobacco operation to the kids in the neighborhood. I went from there to managing our band and got a lot of gigs for us when I was in high school with our band. And then I went to college and did a bunch of business related stuff. Graduated, looked around, said, well, gee, I think I'll join the family business. Ended up buying a branch from my father within a couple of months and went from there. I was a food service and vending business. I did that for 20 years. Built that from 1.5 people to 90 employees. And then I sold that, looked around, said, what's next? So I went to the wealth management world. And my natural market was working with owners of privately held businesses. And I've been obsessed for over 40 years now with what it takes to have a privately held business go from being successful to economically and personally sustainable. And that means somebody else would want to own the business after you're done with it.
Okay. Leaving a legacy, right?
Well, not necessarily. It's just that if you build a business that somebody else will want to own, you've built yourself a better vehicle for a business, and you're going to have more fun, you're going to make more money, and have less stress.
God, that's something we all want, right?
Yeah.
All right. Well, we know about the professional you, but what the listeners really want to know is the real you. So I have some questions you need to answer.
Okay.
Chocolate or vanilla?
Chocolate.
Absolutely, right? Television or books?
Books.
All right. Any favorites?
Well, I'm reading I read a couple novels. I read a book a week.
Oh, good.
Yeah, and I'm right now in the middle of a 1,000-page novel, which I actually count as 4 books. So I'm giving myself 3 weeks to read it. There's a book by a guy named Neil Stephenson, who's my favorite fiction writer. For business books, boy, there's probably, I've read way over 1,000 business books. So you have to say, what's the topic? And I'll give you a book I like about it. Huge fan of Patrick.
Sounds like you're a library of information.
Yeah, I'm a fountain of useless information.
Oh, I doubt that. All right. Well, final question. Would you rather live in the past or live in the future?
How about live in the present?
Ooh, okay. What's so great about today?
Well, it's a day. And if you're living in the past, you're sort of, everything is a historical event. If you're living in the future, you're anticipating what's going to happen, but you forget to enjoy today. One of the problems with goals is people are focused on the end result and forget the journey. And I don't know about you, but when you plan for a vacation, a lot of times the journey is actually more interesting than the destination.
Yes.
And if we don't pay attention to the journey, we miss some really, really important things along the way. So I want to live in the present, not the past or the future.
I love it. I'm so glad you said that because I'm curious about your journey. You've been around, like you said, for over 40 years doing this, and everybody has a backstory, right? We've all been through the ups and downs. So tell us about your journey. What are the most prominent lessons learned that you've learned from your backstory?
The most important lesson I've learned is to stop screaming.
Hmm.
When I first went in the business, I was a my way or the highway sort of guy. I was a terrible listener. I would blame people all the time for making mistakes. I never took responsibility when things went wrong. It was always someone else's fault. And that's a really bad way to run a business because if you do that, your employees really don't care about you or your business. They're just waiting for a chance to get back at you. So I went to one of those new age seminars that was around in the 80s, and I had this epiphany that it really was me that was causing the problems. It wasn't everybody else. So once I learned to take personal responsibility for things that were happening in my life got significantly better. And so did my business, for that matter.
This is the business where you went from 1 to 90 plus employees?
Yes, yes. And along the way, we almost went bankrupt a whole bunch of times and had some major theft along the way because the vending and food service business was a cash business. So we would play a game, and the game was my employees would figure out a way to steal. I would figure out a way to stop them, and then they would come up with a new way to steal. So this went on for 20 years. Sometimes I was really successful, sometimes not so successful, but it was, it's sort of the game you play when you're in a cash business.
Yeah, I can relate because in my coffee and smoothie business, although I'm not in the cash-based model, we used to go out and do the events, the fairs, the festivals that were kind of cash-based. And as the company grew and, I then had employees doing that, yeah, that was always like a struggle, but I'm sure you're going to talk more about this. Like if you have systems in place, that if somebody's bringing in X amount of dollars, well, then you should know how much product is being used or, have those protocols in place,
Yeah,
right?
control. If you're in that sort of business and you don't have cash controls, you're going to lose a lot of money instead of just a little bit of money. Um, any cash business, there's a certain amount of theft. And the dirty little secret about cash businesses is the owners tolerate a certain amount before they get really crazy. Like you could steal $20, $25 a week from me if you were a vending route driver forever. I may know about it, but it wasn't enough for me to get involved and fire you. If you got above that level, it was going to start showing up as being a problem, and your job security just got a lot worse. So, you can spend. I mean, I could have cut it down to the cost would have been higher than what the theft was. And
Yeah, but if you have 90 employees each stealing $20 a week, that can add up.
yes, but I didn't have
Is
90.
that what made you go bankrupt?
No, no. We didn't go bankrupt. We almost did a couple of times.
Okay, fair enough.
No, first of all, 90 people didn't have access to cash. That's the first thing.
Right.
The second thing is not everybody stole $25 a week. So, I mean, some people did, and most people would steal less than that. Someone might say, okay, I'm going to, put $5 in my pocket for refunds. They give away $4 of the refunds and they keep the dollar in the pocket.
Mm-hmm.
That's the sort of type of stuff that would happen. But when someone became committed to stealing, they would often get past that $25 range. If they got past that $25 range, you had a thief. You didn't have somebody who was just, the truth is we're not especially honest. as a race.
Yeah.
We all will cut corners, or many people will cut corners. It's rare that you ever run across somebody who absolutely doesn't cut any corners at all.
Yeah, that is true. And so small business owners can be especially hard hit when somebody embezzles, and there's a lot of things that happen, all the fires that happen in the small business owner's life, right? And there's this stat that everybody knows, 9 out of 10 businesses fail, 9 out of 10 small businesses fail. But I always find that so ironic, because the day that small business owner decided to open up shop, they had absolutely no doubt in their mind that they were going to be hugely successful and profitable. Otherwise, they wouldn't have done it, right? But that just not, the stats are the facts. 9 out of 10 small businesses fail. And that's because they're not building and creating what you call a sustainable business. So talk a little bit about, what does sustainable mean? Because we all, when we start our business, we want to be successful, we want to be profitable, but what does sustainable mean?
Well, sustainable means you have enough cash. I mean, that's, at the end of the day, the reason these businesses cease to exist is they run out of cash. Now, they don't necessarily go bankrupt. They just close the doors and they wander off and do something else. The other thing, which is, something the vast majority of people who go into business have no idea what they're doing. I mean, they start a business, it's sort of like, I'm not a big fan of the E-Myth for a bunch of reasons, but I do like one quote from Michael Gerber. And that is, small businessmen are technicians who have had an entrepreneurial cramp.
Mm.
And when you think about that, most small businesses start because the owner of the business, the person who starts the business, knows how to do something that's technically based. And as a result, they start a business because they think that their technical knowledge is what the world wants. That may or may not be true. I mean, maybe it's true and there's probably some use for it. But the challenge comes in is almost all small businesses, and I do a program on this a lot, is where we go and look at pricing.
Mm.
Most small business owners underprice their business by a dramatic amount, and it's often so much that the business can't be viable. And there's a simple reason for this, is that, especially on the service small business side, a person opens up a business, they have a consulting idea or they have a technical problem they want to solve, and they're out there and they say, well, I can sell 2,000 hours a year of my time. No, you can't sell 2,000 hours a year of your time, because the reality is you have administrative stuff, you have marketing stuff, you have sales stuff, you have writing stuff, maybe, you have thinking things, you have learning things. These are all things you can't bill for. And that's at least half of your time. I actually think it's close to 60% of your time. So when I work with people, I say, who are starting a business, or I'm talking to somebody starting a business, I say, let's look at how much time you have available. It's 800 to 1,000 hours, but I want you to price your time as if you had 800 hours a year to sell.
Mm.
So if your break even is $60 an hour, it's not really $60 an hour if you're thinking it's 2,000 hours you have to sell. It's really about $130 to $140 an hour. So if you can't utilize $130 to $140 an hour, your business is not going to exist 2 years from now, because you're going to burn through your credit cards and your savings and all the things that you use to start the business, which we call stage one in our cracking the cash flow code, which is you have no money, you have no sales, and you have nothing coming in, so you have to use other resources. Well, if you can't replace those other resources with cash pretty darn fast, your business fails.
Yeah, I agree with you, Josh, that so many small business owners, right, they start their business because they feel they have something so amazing that whether it's a product or a service, they just have, the world has to know about it. And so, whatever, their next door neighbor, their sister, their brother thinks they make the most amazing chocolate chip cookies, so I'm going to start a business doing that. And then what they realize is They're giving away their time, their product, everything for free. And do you think that's because they don't really understand what goes into running a business and all of the costs that they truly need to consider? Or what do you think it is that, prohibits small business owners from really launching successfully?
Well, running a successful business is very different from having a successful business idea,
Mm.
meaning that, let's go back. Let's say I'm selling ice cream. I have an ice cream stand, and I'm pricing my ice cream the same price you can buy it in the grocery store. Well, you don't have the manufacturing scale that a Ben and Jerry's or a Haagen-Dazs does. You're going to make a lot less ice cream, and if you're not charging a premium for making that lot less ice cream, you're not going to stick around for a long time because you can't use somebody else's pricing model for what you should charge.
Mm-hmm,
You
mm-hmm.
need to build a value proposition that's for you. When you really think about this, you would say, okay, well, a normal restaurant would mark up their stuff 3 times. They have about 35% food cost, and they need to be above that. Well, that's fine if you're getting 20, 30, 50, $100 per person for a meal, but it's not okay if you open up an ice cream shop or a coffee shop. You need, there's a reason Starbucks charges $3.50 to $6 for their items, because it's $3.50 to $6 per item. It's not $40 per item. So they need to charge a higher number to stay in business. Now, one of the good thing businesses to go into, which has been reasonable, is the coffee business, because people price what Starbucks charges. And Starbucks already is pricing at the appropriate level to have a sustainable business.
Hmm.
So,
Interesting.
yeah, so when you think about that, that's, a reasonable place. But if you're a consultant, you don't have anything really to compare against about how you should price. You just
Yeah,
have,
and
have
it's
the,
sort of the trading time for dollars
yes.
debacle, right? And then how do you scale? If it's just you and people are buying you, do you then have a sustainable slash scalable business?
Well, at the end of the day, not everybody needs to have a sustainable business. What you want to have is you want to be able to build a business where you get financial freedom.
Mm.
And, you know, even businesses that are saleable, only about 50% of them that go to market ever actually sell.
Hmm.
It's a really small percentage of businesses that sell. For an awful lot of people, you don't want to build a business that's saleable. You want to build a business that gets you to financial freedom.
Hmm.
And you can do that without building a business that's saleable. Now, my specialty in my little corner of the world is not doing that, although I've thought about that a bit. I call it the wind down strategy.
Mm. Hmm.
And when someone leaves their business, instead of trying to sell their business, they wind it down, and they use the 80-20 principle to do that. And the 80-20 principle, very simply, is 80% of your results come from 20% of your inputs. 80% of your profits come from 20% of your customers.
Hmm.
So if you know who that 20% is, and you just fire the other 80%, you've now gone yourself into semi-retirement, probably making more money than you did before.
Hmm.
It's a really nice way to leave your business, and you're only working 1 day a week, so your exit out of your industry is more gentle, it's slower. You're not going to go off a cliff and lose all your relationships overnight, which is a whole different thing by itself.
Well, you bring up a good point. I mean, do you think that every um, business owner who's starting out should really have the end game in mind, like what their exit plan is?
Well, it'd be very nice, but the truth is it's not going to happen.
Hmm.
I mean, you don't start a business thinking about how I'm going to get out. You start, you start a business thinking about how am I going to serve people and get customers. So if you're thinking about your exit strategy before you start your business, you're either in Silicon Valley and trying to become a unicorn, and even those guys aren't really doing that. They're really trying to figure out how they can get a business to scale and be big enough so somebody might want to take it public or buy it. The big thing in Silicon Valley, which is a dirty little secret out there, is most acquisitions of Silicon Valley are to acquire talent, not to acquire cash flow.
Mm-hmm. That is true.
So it's a whole different strategy than, the Main Street businesses in Burlington, Vermont. They're not
Right.
going to be acquired to get the barista that knows how to make coffee.
Right.
What.
It's interesting. I mean, I started my business, actually, my coffee and smoothie business, and I did have the end game in mind. I knew that I wanted to run it until my kids graduated school because we were going to be staying in the area. And then, as you alluded to, I wanted to sell it. And the goal is then to, as I'm saying, move down to Florida and live with the old people. But, that I came in with that mindset, knowing what I wanted to do. And so I built my business around that. And then what it did was force me to put systems in place so that I could sell the business and or leave the business, continue running, knowing it would, as you say, continue to be sustainable.
Well, systematizing your business is one of the 5 things you need to do to build a sustainable business. Another
But
thing,
what are those 5 things?
well, the first thing is you have to have, this is just my opinion, by the way. You have to have clear values, because a values-led organization is always more successful than a non-values-led organization, and you get the right people on your team. There's a whole, methodology of building values and then building statements around those values and using those values to run your company. Number 2 is something you had to do if you were going to build your smoothie and coffee business to sell it, was you had to make yourself operationally irrelevant,
Mm-hmm.
which means that you were not involved at all in the day-to-day operations. Because the truth is, when someone comes in to buy a business, they might say they want you, but they don't. They want your cash flow, they want your employees, they want your systems, maybe. They want your managers, but they don't want you. And that's a dirty little secret that nobody ever really talks about.
Right.
The third area is you have to have a recurring revenue stream. Now, in the coffee and smoothie business, that meant having regular customers come in every day and buying stuff from you. You're a retail business, so it's not traditional recurring revenue, but you had to be able to point out and say, you buy this business, you continue doing what we're doing with the systems we have. There's no reason in the world, because I'm not here every day, that your cash flow won't be the same. Then the fourth is that you have to have systems, which you have to systematize your business. You have to let people know what they need to do for success. And the less choice you give your employees, the happier they're going to be, which is a myth that most business owners think is the opposite. Not true. Your employees want to know what they have to do. They don't want to have to figure it out. They want to know they go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and they'll get a result that will make you happy, and you'll say nice things to them. And then finally is having a business that creates enough profit in the 4 crucial areas of profit that you are going to become economically sustainable and financially free from your business. And those 4 areas are enough money to have a really good lifestyle, enough money for an emergency fund that's going to last for at least 6 months, because all businesses have downturns at some point where something bad is going to happen. And if you don't have cash available, you're likely not going to exist. The third area is to have enough money for a fully funded growth program. That's not just marketing, it's not just sales, but it's marketing and sales and what you need to do to grow your business, because businesses are either growing or shrinking. They rarely stay the same for a long time. And then finally, you have to have enough money to fully fund a retirement plan so you can afford to leave your business, because the truth is, even if you can sell your business, there's a tiny fraction of businesses that sell for enough money for someone to write off in the future. You would think that a $2 million business would create lots and lots of cash flow for somebody in retirement. Well, the truth is, if I sell my business for $2 million, I'm only going to be left with $1.2 million after that, because I have taxes to pay and I have costs of selling my business. And in the financial planning world, we believe that you can use about 4% of your capital to spend every year. You go past that, you are at risk of running out of money. Well, 4% of $1.2 million is about $52,000. And most people live on more than $52,000 a year.
Yeah.
So your business will get you part of the way. It's not going to get you all the way. Now, if I fully fund a retirement plan and I do it right, I might have $2, $3, $4 million in that retirement plan, which is a whole lot more than I got from selling my business.
Yeah.
So now I've got $52,000 plus I've got $80,000. So now that I'm at, $132,000, that's a little bit better of an outcome than $52,000.
Yeah. Well, you've given a lot of food for thought. I mean, the small business owner who, is soaking all this in, right? And figuring out, like you alluded to, pricing. It seems to be the biggest mistake you see them make. And you covered like the 5 pillars. What do you think is like, where should the small business owner start? Because it can be completely overwhelming, right? So if somebody, whether they have an idea percolating in their head, they've currently started and they're just sort of struggling to ramp up, or they're realizing they've kind of plateaued and what am I going to do to fund my retirement, as you just talked about, where should they start? Or are the answers different where they are along their journey?
The answer is different depending on where you are along your journey. We put together an infographic, which we call the success path for cash flow freedom. And it shows the 5 steps, 5 stages that people go through to create cash flow freedom in their business.
Okay.
Financial freedom in their business. And it's a nice little useful thing, but if I haven't started my business yet, I'm going to have a different problem than if I've got 25 employees and I'm stuck. If I have 25 employees and I'm stuck, it's usually me that's in the way. I'm the bottleneck.
Yeah.
If I'm starting my business, it's do I have a good enough idea that will create enough customers to give me enough cash before I run out of my source of funding. So it's a whole different problem you're trying to solve. So you solve that problem and you go into a transition into your next stage in business. And with that comes a whole new set of problems that you're going to have if you want to keep moving forward. Now, most businesses get stuck at about stage 3.
What's that?
That's where you have to learn how to delegate. That's the step there. And learning how to delegate is probably the most difficult skill a business owner ever has to learn. And few learn it well.
Was that a lesson you had to learn when you grew from 1 to 90?
That was a big one for me because, again, I used to be a screamer. Everything was somebody else's fault. Well, if you're going to run your business that way, you can't delegate because there's no trust. And one of the biggest issues around delegation is trust. If the delegatee does not trust you and you don't trust them, there's no way for you to be successful in delegating. If you think when I've delegated something to somebody else and they make a mistake and you think they did it on purpose because they're an idiot, you're never going to be successful in delegating because you're not going to trust them enough to actually do the job, even though they might make some mistakes along the way. So it really comes down to trust and learning to tolerate mistakes. Most business owners never get past that, so most businesses never grow past 15 to 20 employees.
Interesting. Well, Josh, we've hit the clock. We've run out of time. I could talk to hours. I could talk to you for hours about this because, I'm so passionate about helping small business owners, not only with their marketing, but ultimately build what you call a sustainable business so they can have the freedom and the independence. So you mentioned an infographic that has these 5 pillars.
Right.
How can people perhaps get a copy of that and or learn more about you?
Well, that's easy to do. To get the copy of that, you go to www.sustainablebusiness.co/cashflow, one word, and you'll be brought to a page and you get the infographic there. www.sustainablebusiness.co happens to be our website where you can go there and we have videos and a podcast and some written stuff, and a bunch of things around that. We also have I just finished doing a program that allows people to figure out where they are on the road to cash flow freedom. And to get that, they just have to go to thecashflowcode.com, www.thecashflowcode.com, and you can take our quiz. It does ask for a bunch of personal information, which we don't share, but you got to put it in there to get an answer. And it'll show you whether you're on the road to being cash flow free from your business or you're not. And you're actually going to learn something just by putting the numbers in, because you're going to say, oh, gee, I've got a lot of assets here, but nothing over there. So maybe I should do about something over there, which could be real estate or it could be your retirement plan.
Great. Josh, you shared so much helpful information. I know that you're committed to help tearing down that stat, 9 out of 10 businesses fail, right? And what you've shared today can get that small business owner on the right track. So definitely tap into Josh, his wisdom, his free reports, and his website full of valuable content. Any last parting words, Josh?
Yeah, enjoy the journey. That's, it's really about that as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, small business, hashtag small business life, right? And it is a journey.
Right.
All right, everybody. This is Small Business Stacey, your small biz marketing specialist, here to help you get your marketing into action so that you can have a sustainable business. And I'm always here to help you become a small biz marketing whiz. Bye-bye.
This podcast was brought to you by Small Business Stacey, the small biz marketing specialist. Want to know the 6 simple steps that will double, even triple your business in the next 30 days? Go to smallbizmarketingspecialist.com/transform and finally achieve the successful and profitable business you always knew you'd have. That's smallbizmarketingspecialist.com/transform.